So once again, thank you very much for joining today. And yes, the 3 minutes waiting have been worth the waiting time. Have still quite a few joined the session. But funnily enough, when you sit here and you know the camera is on 3 minutes, seems like an endless time. But you know, once you start working, 3 minutes is like nothing. You know, always funny. So welcome for the Enginsight, the technical session of the two webinar series. For the people that are today in news, so to say, we have had a sales commercial session last week, discussing a bit more, as I said, from a sales perspective and a few commercial surroundings. In case you are interested in that, do drop me an email. Email will be provided later on, or connect with me on LinkedIn and I send it to you then, or I send you a recording to the session. So you can consume content if you want. Some housekeeping. There's no camera on, there's no voice on, but the Q&A is enabled. Also in a way that only Stefan and myself can read it. So if you put something in, then depending on who's speaking, the other one will drop in the question sooner or later. In case there are no questions, and there are no questions. But for that, we will provide afterwards, give it today or tomorrow, a follow-up email with the slides and the recording to the session. In case I forgot anything, then I will add it later on. Maybe quick introduction. I'm Thomas Tölker. I'm running on the commercial side with my colleague Lutz and with obviously the help of Stefan and the pre-sales colleagues, the internationalization here at Enginsight. And I will guide you through very quick the Enginsight introduction and then hand over to Stefan for the commercial part. Stefan, you want to say a few introductory words?
Yeah, my name is Stefan Undan. I'm the presets guy, so if you have any technical question, please send me a mail.
All right, then we switch to the next slide, starting. All right, last session, I've been discussing about the components that are making the Enginsight platform. So the watchdog, and I will just name it, I will not go through it again. The watchdog for network monitoring and inventory, the Hector as the automated pen testing tool, the Observer for website web application scanning tool, and the Pulsar agent residing on servers and clients. Actually, you know, doing a lot of the magic that happens within the Enginsight platform, and all that is accompanied by a SIEM component. Today we will talk about the first 4 components, or will show use cases that consist of the functionality. In case you are interested specifically on the SIEM, do me a favor, give us some feedback, as I said, via QA here or later via email, and then we can set up a separate SIEM session and we'll invite separately for it. Now, the hop into the platform is the dashboard, obviously, as we have also a partner audience here. The platform is multi-tenant capable, so meaning if you as a partner offer a service on the Enginsight platform, you can aggregate the respective customers within the view, and then in for example, in an asset operations center, you will see all relevant assets within your service environment across all partner landscape, so to say, or the technical landscape. So there's a lot of visibility and also automation built in from the general design idea of the product. Now, the dashboard serves obviously as an entry point, providing a lot of high-level information, and I will just name a few because Stefan will later on just work in the solution with the CVE cockpit. I'm going to say a bit on the CVEs in a minute. You know, on IDS, IPS functionalities with the network anomalies, with audit results that you see, risk scores. I'm also going to say about that on the next slide a few things. And obviously, you are also in a position of building individual dashboards. So if you have separate, let's say, questions that you want to get answered out of the system and you want to put these on individual dashboards, think about a service offering where you want to monitor certain things, then obviously you can build individual dashboards. The whole platform, and I've said that before, I will also repeat that now on the next slide, is built with a process idea. I will shortly repeat that in here because that will determine in how Stefan is going through the solution. So we have these 5 steps, the identify, attack, detect, react, and improve step. Right? The identification is a live inventory building on software and hardware. That you can see it's obviously persistent inventory that's relevant not only for the product, how it is built, and later actions that you will take, but also a fundamental step if you look into the direction of compliance, because you always need to know what's there. There are here playing the watchdog and the pulsar agent into the identification phase. Then once we have identified what everything is there, we're going to attack it by the pen testing tool, the Hector. Not going into everything that is in here. Stefan will talk about that later on. Once you have established this is your situation in terms of what's there and security/vulnerability status, then we turn into the detection phase. So the ongoing security idea of the product. And there's, besides the pulsar agent, also the watchdog and the observer coming into play. Once again, I'm not going to read into, through all this because part of that will be shown in the use cases. Once you have detected something, you also want to react on it, right? So with an alarm management, alarming system, Stefan will also show building an alarm. Why is that relevant? When you see that, think about everyday situations where you like to get information out of a system, what that would be, right? That will kind of trigger the beauty of what everything is behind here in terms of alarming. Obviously, automated actions on servers and clients. Once you detect something, you want to have, in the best case, an automated reaction on it. So, you can sleep tight and know things will be covered. However, you still want to be alarmed about it. And running an IDS also comes naturally with the idea of preventing with an IPS. And then you come into the improvement phase. So you've seen something, you have reacted on it, but then it's the question, how can I permanently improve it? And then we are talking about auto patching, system hardening with configuration management and micro-segmentation. Also, if that functionality is something that you're looking for, standing next to network-biased micro-segmentation. This is an agent-based micro-segmentation. All right, that's for the process. And I said I would shortly talk about CVEs. When you run through, at least I run through press or LinkedIn or whatever, CVEs is always discussed, especially during these times, talking also about digital sovereignty. So I'm not going to explain what a CVE stands for, but that we are running on a CVSS version 3, so the scoring is on version 3. But the CVE database is also based on the NIST, and we all know that also the manpower, the horsepower behind the NIST is currently slashed, or has been already slashed, meaning the information details and the amount of information, we will see in what the impact is. But that is one of the reasons why already for quite some time we are crawling many, many sources regarding CVEs. So these are different vendor sources. These are also blogs and certain relevant press that runs into the topic. I always like to give an example on why that is relevant based on a vendor everyone knows, which is SAP. Understanding SAP provides their platform on basically 3 operating systems, which is Windows, SUSE, and Red Hat. And depending on what kind of subscription plan you run and how long your subscription is, you might run on old versions, partly tailor-made for SAP, right? So finding a vulnerability in a certain distribution does not necessarily mean it's also covered in another distribution. And that can run both ways. SAP might find something within theirs, might update it, but it will not be updated in other distributions and the other way around. So it is relevant to monitor these different sources to get to know everything what's, so to say, in the market or, in the wild, to be able to really patch everything that you want. But also, Stefan will go a bit deeper on it. Maybe one thing, the separation, because that's also a frequently asked question to us, CVSS and EPSS, okay, if you see a vulnerability, does not necessarily mean it is relevant for me in terms of it's exploitable. So we have in the system two values that we work with. The one is the, let's say, severity of a CVE, and then the probability that it's being exploited, the EPSS score, and that is a combination that helps you guiding through what needs to be done first, right? So it kind of gives you an importance where to look first at. But enough of that kind of small detour into the CVE topic. We will also see that a bit later on within the demo and the UI. And with that, Stefan, I would just hand it trustfully over to you.
Okay, perfect. So now let's talk about the architecture, the infrastructure, because it's very important. Because for us, it's a very important step to know where the data is stored. And for this, you can install your own on-prem, Enginsight on-prem in this case. And this is very easy because we have an image for this. And when you install it, you install on the bottom, you see a service API UI and a DB component or service. These are only two virtual machines. For example, one is the application server with microservices like the services updater, reporter, and so on. And the important microservice is the API and the UI. And these components communicate with the database server. It's a MongoDB. That's a standalone virtual machine, for example. And everything that can connect to the API of HTTPS, for example, that can communicate with the Enginsight platform. So that means that when you have a sensor are observer, actor, and watchdog. I will explain it later for which it is. And the agent, the Pulsar agent, is for Windows, Linux, and Mac. When these sensors or agent can communicate to the API, then you can monitor everything in this kind of view. So when you put it in the client network and you put an actor in the client network, for example, you can pen test the client network or every other network also when the firewall has the correct routes. Also, it's possible to put the sensors externally. So, for example, in the most cases, it's a good idea to have an external observer to monitor the website. So that means everything communicate directly to the API, and it's easy to set up with an image. And for example, when we have 500 Pulsar agent, we need only 2 VMs. One is the application server with 4 CPUs, 8 GB RAM, and 200 GB hard disk. And the database server has 4 CPUs, 4 GB RAM, and 100 GB of hard disk. Yes, and that's it. And when you have the platform online, you can add sensors and Pulsar. So, for example, when we have the use case inventory, the inventory part is in the identity and detect part. So we need the watchdog and the Pulsar agent, for example, and then we can discover every device with a watchdog in the network with ping, port, or sniffing functions permanently. That's an ongoing process. When you, for example, when you have only one watchdog, you must know when you will monitor from this network, other networks, you must open a lot of ports, for example, because we try to identify the device correctly. For example, when you have a printer in a network, we see the MAC address, for example, we know it's Kyocera, Lexmark, or something else printer. And then we want to check it over port 9100, for example, or something else. And for this, we need to communicate from this network to the other network where the printer is located with port 9900. If you don't like to open a lot of ports, you must install a different watchdog, for example. When you have, for us, it's important, or we know it's important to have different views. And when you order a license for a Hector, for example, or something else, or Hector watchdog, you have an inventory and pen test flat rate. You can install so many watchdog if you need. Also with a Hector, yes. And when you have installed it, I will show it directly in the platform. Wait, so when you have installed it, you must configure it. Or one step back, when you will install it, you can install the watchdog, for example, on a Linux host. You click add watchdog, then you have a curl command, for example, run it. 1 minute later, you have a watchdog online, and then you must check it that the permanent monitoring is active. And when you wish to sniff some app request, for example, because you need it, and hacker don't reply on ping package or port scans. They drop the packages, but in the network, when he will check the network, so which other computers in the network and so on, he must identify the MAC address to the IP address, and then we have an ARP request in the network, so as broadcast event, and then we see, oh, there's a MAC address, there's an IP, we can't ping it. Oh, we add it to the inventory. Also, for this, you must enable the promiscuous mode on the network card. For example, in this, on the watchdog, we have 4 network cards, and in 3 networks, we have enabled the promiscuous mode. So this is part 1. Then you get an inventory. When you have the inventory, we can add some information like the alias, a description. We can add tags, so it's a switch, it's something else. We can add categories, but the important part is to know who is the technical person for this device, or the specialist for this device. You can add a lot of people there, so every or every team member you can add to as a technical manager, for example, and you can add location information. So you have a perfect inventory, and then you can create a report. The second part, that's only the hardware part.
Stefan, there was one question, just a quick one, just a word question. Automated tags, question mark. Or will people... Sorry, you go.
Yeah. At the moment, we don't have automated tags. We will add it. I will show it later, because we changed the whole web front end. Or that's an ongoing process at the moment. I will show you it later at the host root in the Pulsar agent. I will switch to the new view later, and then you see the auto tagging function, and this function will also add to the inventory later. Yes.
Okay. No further question.
Okay, perfect. So the second part of the inventory is the software inventory, and for this we need the Pulsar agent. When we install it, so it's also easy. We have here, for example, for Linux system, a curl command, or for Windows systems, a PowerShell command. Then we can install it, and when we install the agent will first fetch monitoring information. Monitoring information is everything. So we know the device information, which vendor, BIOS vendor we have, which motherboard vendor, so on. So this is also inventory information. And we know which software is installed, for example. And this information is perfect because we can export it and so on. So it's easy. And we have other information, inventory information, which service or which program is in the auto starts, which service is active, or which connection are open, and the processes also. These are, every information is important for the inventory, but we need this information for the security. I will show it later because this was the first use case, inventory. The second use case is the attack and defense part, for example. Attack and defense also two components. One is the Hector and one is the Pulsar agent again, because the Pulsar agent can protect the client also. But first, let's talk about the Hector. What is the Hector? The Hector is also a little sensor, a little curl command, for example. And when we install it, I will show it later. You can define targets or destination IPs, destination host names, and so on. You can configure the audit definitions, like it's a scheduled task every Friday at 9 a.m. You will check the client network, for example. That can you configure. And when you configure it, the Hector will get a job and starts with information gathering. So they must know which device is online. You can use also the watchdog information because the watchdog has all information. So the information gathering part is done. But you can also add a network address. So then the step one is again. Then the second step is the service discovery part. This is the part we have only add, or that's one part. We add an open source component, Nmap, because Nmap is a good library, but all other components or all other source code is developed by us, and we develop the software in Germany. So we know which code line is in the component or in the sensor. So it's vector free and perfect. Yes. And then vector free, good. Good point. That's the second step, the scanning which service has a CVE to know it. But this part is also sometimes a false positive part, because when you have a for example, Linux server, SSH server, the SSH banner will only print the major version, for example. So in Debian systems, you know, we use SSH daemon 9.2, for example, but we don't know that the patched version 10, for example, and in the patch version 10, the CVE is fixed, but we don't know it because the SSH daemon doesn't send the patch version to us. But it's important for its positives. The hacker must check it also, and that need times. Time is an important part when you will hack. So next step, brute forcing, UDP, SNMP checks, and so on. And the last steps are payloads. Payloads are exploits, but we change. We change every exploit to a payload, and we change the update part in the exploit. So when you see an exploit for a database, the last step is update a field, for example. We change it to a sleep command. We will only try to, if it's possible, to send a command. Yes. So, and the detect part for this example is on the Pulsar agent, the network or the intrusion detection system. Every firewall has an intrusion detection system. In the most cases, you have only enabled it for example, for the server network, not for the clients. But the clients are mostly the highest risk part because the human can install something or something else, and the backdoor is on the client. And when you communicate to the network, to the same network, the firewall doesn't see the packages. So it's a good point to install directly to install a host-based IDS. So for example, I've created a use case for this. First, we go to the penetration testing part. First, I've told you, you must install a Hector. It's also so easy. Add Hector here, and when you install it, you have a few configuration or a few settings. First, alias, it's clear. The concurrent mode is the settings that you how many IPs we scan at the same time. Automatically mode means when you have 4 CPUs, we scan 4 IPs at the same time, but you can change it directly. For example, when we want to scan 200 IPs at the same time. It's a funny part. And when you do this, for example, and you have a firewall in the network, and you scan other networks that is routed over the firewall has some, in the most cases, some problems with the packages because they are too fast, too many packages, and so on. So features like TCP sync flood detection or IDS, IPS on the firewall will block the packages. For this, the frequency is very important. The frequency means how fast we send the packages. I changed the settings to low because it's the best settings. So we wait 1 second for a new TCP connection, for example, with medium only 10 milliseconds and 5 milliseconds was high. So when you change it, it's you must know that the scan need longer time, and you can change also the port range. So when you have installed it, you must know which target group you have. In my case, I've installed a fresh Windows 10, and this is IP, directly the IP, or you can add a network I will add one test group. You can add a network like this, or you can add DNS name, or a range is also possible that you know that you will only scan the first IPs, for example. This everything is possible. Also the information from the watchdog. So when you add a target group, you will define outer definition. The outer definition means name. You must set the vector, also the source of the scan, the destination of the scan, and if you wish, you can add some more details like out providers. That means you can add LDAP usernames or SSH, SNMP, VMI or WMI. Yes. And then you can add a schedule task, for example, with a lovely clone view, clone job view, so you can add it, or you can skip some settings. When you start a pen test in your network, some side effects can be occurred. It's possible that a printer print the settings side, for example, or I had the problem that I break a switch because they had a loop put it, and the switch has only one CPU for management and routing, and he was overloaded with the requests, for example. Then you can skip some checks like brute forcing when the account was logged out, for example. The BSI checks for Germany, or includes printer, for example. So, or you can add own password lists. And I start 3 scans. I add or I installed the Windows 10, enabled remote desktop. This was my first scan. The second scan was I add special usernames, for example. And the third scan was I have enabled the intrusion prevention. And this was the scans. Here is the first scan, only Windows 10 with remote desktop. And I see directly how many checks we started, how many findings we have, what is the risk score. The risk score is low, but we calculate the risk score very easy. Critical get 100 points, medium, for example, 10, low 1. So it's easy. And this is the risk score. And you can add comments. For example, I have added the comment install Windows 10 and enabled remote desktop. And then you see, for example, in the scatter plot or in the table, which are the highest risk hosts. Then you can check it directly to click here, or when you have many hosts, you will go to the summary, or will check this here, or in my case, I will go to the target view, and you see the scan, the findings of the scan. When you install a Windows 10 enabled remote desktop, you must know Windows enabled automatically the old version of TLS, so version 1, version 1.1, and then you have little exploits or little vulnerabilities. For example, here's a sweet attack, or DA eater is maybe eater attack also. When you add, when you, for example, this, when you will search by Google, for example, to the exploit, so sweet attack, you can add also the exploit search. For example, you find an exploit in 5 minutes for this. It's very easy. Yes. So this is the first view, and the second was with one critical, because I have a username. Then you see the target. Here I found my good administrator password. For example, good to know when you have a start password, for example, or from employees they leave the company. You can add it to the auto definition, and then we will scan every device, for example. But if you want to know which changes we have in the report, here was a risk score lower than in the next scan, you can go to the delta reports, and then you can add a second view, and we calculate the difference. For example, here, the brute force attack. They can't find it. Yes. So, and the third scan had only one low. Why is the question? Because I have add only one tag to the Windows host. Oh, yes. I will change the view to the beta overview. 1 moment. This per user, that look greater because I use the new tagging functions. Here, I have only add the IPS hard function, and then you see in the host directly, network anomalies, that he blocked the TCP scans. And this was only, this was from the first scan, the port scan and the zinc flooding. And when we block the port scan directly, then we can't see any issues or any findings or any vulnerabilities. That's very easy, and it was only this tag. So it's a cool feature, and this worked great. So, yes. The next use case is, oh, wait. Is a file integrity monitoring. What does that mean? You can monitor every file, every folder. If someone reads the folder or the file, if someone changed it, deleted, created, and so on. And that's a very cool feature because you can check your system files, for example, if the winlogon.exe file was changed, for example, or you can add some honeypots to your systems, like when you have a folder, for example, you have a folder, an honeypot folder on your Windows systems under C, you have a folder offline backups, and then you put a password txt file in this folder. You can check which user reads the file. You can check your awareness training, or you can check if a hacker is on the systems and check everything. And that's also very easy because we must only add some special rules. We have managed rules for the systems, for the system files, but you can add everything. For example, I use at home radius authentication with certificates. Yes, I know under the root folder you don't work. Yes. But in my case, I generate the certificates in the root folder, in the step folder, or in the step folder. And when someone changed something in this folder, I get a notification. I know it. I know which user has changed something. I don't know. I don't see the change directly, but I know he changed something. Or you can add some other rules like this. October last year, the hacker group No Name was hacked a lot of companies. and I add every extension to the FIM to know if the system was hacked, for example. Yes. And then we add only an alert, but I will show it directly on the platform. It's easier. For example, we will change the rules. The default rules, managed rules are maintained by us. So for example, the important rules, folders by Linux, the important files by Windows. Here are my custom FIM encryption extensions, or also hacker groups, or important folder. Yes, and it's easy to add a new folder. So, for example, offline backup. I will monitor the whole folder. And then you must add an alert. So, under the main menu in alerts, you can create to any time alerts, or you can use quick buttons in the software. And then you must choose the agent or the sensors like the observer, watchdog, and so on. We have different alerts for each category. Now, for us, it's important to know by every Windows host, for example, if the FIM, the file integrity monitoring report and change, but only for the severity high and only between the non-business hours 8 to 5. So it's this case, German layout. Yes, but you can also choose other alerts. For example, if you want to know if, so we can add also some other text here. For example, when we want to know by each Windows systems, but only by the clients. You can add here clients again to know if a local administrator will add. So, what a new admin account created. That is a normal alert for us. Or, for example, the hard disk is full. We have a lot of predefined service alerts here. And if you wish other alerts, you can also push everything in the theme, but not today, and create some custom things. So this was a file integrity monitoring use case. The next use case is the endpoint use case. What does that mean? Endpoint, wait, here's my presentation. Endpoint. Endpoints for us are websites, wells, IP address, and so on that we can browse via browser, for example. So what does it mean? What we will check, for example, the certificate information, the availability of the website. You can check with different observers the response time from different locations. For example, you install an observer in Germany, one in London, one in Amsterdam. You can check from different locations the website, what is the response time, and so on. And you can also monitor the DNS settings. You can check your SPF or CAA records and so on. And the important part, we check every software that we see on the side if we have a vulnerability. We check the HTTP header, for example, if the X-frame option is disabled, and so on. And it's very easy to configure a new website to the platform. So yes, I understand. Yep, I will delete my website and I will re-edit. Region. I told you you can choose more region, for example, but now only Frankfurt. The technical and specialist information also. Then I will start the scan. This need around 2 minutes because we checked everything now in the background, the DNS settings and so on. Maybe I have a good example.
Maybe I can just chip in a question here. Also, again, a short question. Region question mark. You just mentioned you can choose different regions, and then he popped up a region question mark.
Okay, sorry. Yes, the region is for us a tag. When you install an observer, you get the observer settings and you must add a region. That is a tag. So for example, this is a server that is hosted in Frankfurt, and we add the region, or the tag Frankfurt, the region Frankfurt for this. But this is a good question because I can show you some other settings. Here we see a shared observer. The observer is not installed in my organization. This is a shared observer from another organization. And they only disable this option, operate as dedicated observer. That means that's only for this organization. And when you disable the settings, you have a shared observer. It's important that you don't allow by a shared observer the allow internal targets, because all customers see the internal IP address and can scan the network. So, okay. Yes. And when you scan it, you get a report, for example, for my website, the risk score, the certificate information, the performance, if we have any vulnerabilities. No, perfect. Yes, it's severities, and you see the application if the end of life information, the software update information, because we know it with our CVE database. We know each version of a program, on the most programs. So, and we check every link on the page. We check it if the link is in a bad reputation database, for example. On my website is a GitHub link to my personal repository, and GitHub is on the blacklist because GitHub has some repositories with bad code. So for us, GitHub is bad. But all links that we downloaded have no malware. And then we can check every information in detail. So for example, the application which is outdated is my Nginx. I can install an update. Now, when I have the POSA agent on the host, I can update it directly with the POSA agent, for example. Or I must update my Bootstrap version, for example. My DNS settings are perfect because I worked with Enginsight to optimize it. So I know the CAA record is correct, the SPF record is correct. And for my personal website, I don't, or the changes on the DNS records, I change, from my personal side, I would change one time in the year the DNS record. And for this, I can also create alert, for example, to know it when the DNS checker is changed. For example, all endpoints, and then I take it to all endpoints. I know each page now, and then I can create an alert, days until certificate expires, or invalid CIA record is now, connection reviews, data protection, or DNS record was changed. In the most cases, the most customer will add only some alerts like the page is offline, unrespondable, and if we have a new vulnerability, for example. Yes. So this is the platform. These are my 4 use cases now. If you have any question, please ask. Yes.
So, as Stefan said, now is the time for asking, respectively, punching in questions. We have in the meantime, you can punch in questions now if you don't like, or if you don't have any questions, you can also punch in some feedback and general feedback. I will use the time here. That's the final, the hop off slide. We will also share that afterwards with also links to documentation. If you want to test the system, where you can sign up. Well, now the presentation switch, but that's not so important. Yeah, fine. I know the text anyway. There will be that is for the testing. There's also a link towards the documentation that is quite detailed, where you will also find, if you are interested in that, for the Hector, for example, the respective attack vectors that we use. If you have dedicated questions that you like, we do provide on the last slide also the 2 email addresses of Stefan and myself. So happy to receive anything. And for someone that is interested, the CVE database that we have been talking about is publicly available. Check out on cve.enginsight.com. And if you have their comments, improvements, ideas, or whatever, we would be happy to receive that as well. I know we have done today a technical, and as no questions are coming in, I will just have kind of a closing remark for me now. We have discussed a lot about technology. Obviously, the real interesting part for me as a commercial person comes once we translate these into business opportunities, right? This could range when Stefan talks about the inventory, then a lot directly with me. There's also with risk management background. There's kind of a compliance bulb that starts flashing, because that will always be for any ISO 27001 or TSAX or any. You need to have documented what you have in the networks. May that be on the hardware and on the software part. If I see on the observer that Stefan discussed about, and about the regions, basically mean having an observer in different locations installed for monitoring the same website. If I run a web shop, and availability is a key issue for me from certain areas, from certain regions, then that information is a clearly must-have in what is the latency, respectively, the availability, not to mention if a website is down, obviously that as well. But then, and the same with the pen testing, right? Understanding, okay, there is this functionality, how can I commercially translate it? Also, do I want to run maybe a certain service with certain intervals on certain inventory? Maybe, and that is something that commercially someone needs to think about. Include a certain whatever size range targets that I include within my service offering, or maybe I have tiered offering. So I think there's a lot that you can take out of it once you kind of dive into the technology, dive into the features, and then think, how can I translate it into a commercial aspect of it. This is just what I kind of wrote down during the session in the commercial, kind of take out from here. As I said, for me, that would be it. And I see there are no questions coming in here. So that means, Stefan, you have explained everything in a way that there are no questions open. Hopefully we caught your interest with further questions once this had sank in, or you like to test it. Then we're happy to receive any comments, any questions. And with that, it's Wednesday. It's a bit too early for wishing a nice weekend, but since it's an Easter week, we are happy to say we wish you a very nice Easter time. Enjoy the days, and hope to see you soon, one way or another again. All right, from my side, thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.